DPW meeting started. First thing we need is a motion to approve the minutes. A motion by Mr. Sokol, second by Mrs. Wood. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried. With that, turn it over to John.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. We'd like to start with Parks and Recs. And we've got Justin Gagnon here from Saratoga North Creek Railway. Turn it over to him for comment.
Morning, everyone.
Morning.
Morning.
So, I'll start off with an update on our most recent event and the last thing that we did in 2016 before Polar Express starts. That was the Fall Foliage Festival. We hold that at the Hadley Luzerne Station site. This year was the best year yet in terms of attractions and functions going on within the towns of Hadley and Luzerne. We have a lot of interaction with the Hadley Business Alliance. We had tours set up and buses available to shuttle people around to area museums. We had a little bit of a hiccup on Saturday with the shuttle, but things happen.
Got remedied real quick.
It got remedied. So, yeah, the entire event was very well received. We had all of our normal stuff, the bounce houses, the high strikers, the pumpkin painting. We added giant Jenga. We had these enormous Jenga puzzles for the kids. We also had pumpkin bowling, face painting, the whole gamut. We had just over 600 passengers for the whole event. Since then, I met with the Hadley Business Alliance along with Natalie Drawdy, who also works for us. You guys met her a few months ago. She's our manager of passenger services. We met with them last week, and they are very excited to do it again next year. I've already given them the dates, and with any luck, it'll be even bigger and better next year. So this is a really good example of a reoccurring event in addition to Polar Express that we're going to continue to do, and it just keeps growing. So north of North Creek, this doesn't have anything to do with the county-owned portion, but we have repaved the crossing at Barton Mines Road and the northernmost crossing on Route 28. Both of those were in a state of disrepair. They have been addressed. The ski train, the Pullman ski train, the website went live last week, and Mr. Ellis has decided to send us 4 sleeping cars instead of 3. He is very excited about this new service, and I'm excited that he's excited. There was a question last month what our demographics look like, where our passengers were coming from. We went back into our ticket software that we use. It's called Fulgen. We were able to pull up people that already had reservations. Obviously, we weren't able to take into account walk-up passengers because we just don't ask everybody for their address when they just walk up to buy a ticket. But primarily our passengers are coming from Connecticut, Vermont, New Hampshire, Pennsylvania, Florida, Ohio, and Virginia. And the majority of our groups are coming from either Canada or Europe, which was a surprise for me. We do obviously have some groups coming from within the United States and the eastern United States mostly, but primarily they're coming from Canada and Europe. A little update for Polar Express. Our hiring is complete. We ended up with a total of 134 seasonal employees that we've hired. They'll be starting somewhere around November 10th. We'll start doing orientations and training to get them prepared for the onboard show. Our first rehearsal train is November 16th, and our first scheduled run is November 18th. And our last scheduled run is December 23rd. We increased our seating capacity this year by 240 passengers for first class. We've added tables in all of our coaches, just extra amenities. And just as a side note here, SNC will be participating again with both the North Creek Lights On ceremony, which I believe is going to be held December 10th, and we'll also be doing the Town of Corinth Christmas Train, which is December 3rd. So just 2 more events that we do every year. That's all I have for the update. If there are any questions.
Conover.
Chairman,
I think I've asked that question about the origin of a lot of those visitors. That's very interesting information. Do you have that in any type of automated format that you could share with our surgeon people that's not confidential, that's proprietary on your part?
Yes, I would just have to make sure that we're not giving away people's addresses, because right now the report that I print has the customer's name, address, and everything, telephone numbers. So, I know there's a format that we can print off, because I already did it, to get this information. I would just have to make sure that we can present it in a confidential manner, like you said.
Sure. I was just thinking perhaps our marketing people might
Yep.
be interested in looking at that information. Thank you.
Sure, I
Thank
can.
you for the speedy response as well.
Yeah, no problem. It's what I do.
Jason, I was wondering if you could, do you have anything new on the Renegade Riders?
Renegade Rail Riders, yes. Last 2 weekends ago, they finally brought up their bike. It wasn't a prototype, it's the actual rail bike that they are going to be using in the spring. They did a test run on our line north of North Creek, which is where they intend to start their operations. The test went well. They found that there's a couple of things that they have to tweak on the bike itself before they go into full production, but they are still shooting for spring of 2017. As everybody is aware, we introduced them earlier spring 2016. They wanted to get started in July of 2016. I had cautioned them. I don't know much about rail bikes at all, but I know a lot about railroads, and I had cautioned them just with the projects that they were looking at, not having any of the contractors lined up to do the work yet, that they likely weren't going to make their goal. They realized that too as time marched on, so they decided, okay, we'll just push it back, we'll do some introductory runs this year and go full bore next year. But yes, it is progressing.
Thank you. I also wanted to thank you again for the tour a few weeks ago. That was very informative and impressive, everything that's going on.
It was my pleasure. I love showing off the train, and I like showing off North Creek. All right, with that, I would like to introduce Mark Ellsworth. He is our train master, and he's another manager of the SNC.
Thank you, Justin. As he said, my name is Mark Ellsworth. I'm the train master for the Saratoga North Creek Railway, which means that I make the train schedule for the conductors and engineers. I also assist Superintendent Larry Pitblotto in some of the safety coordination and testing that we do on site. I started with Saratoga North Creek in 2011. I've been with Iowa Pacific Holdings since 2009. I started as a waiter on the train and progressed up to a conductor. And once Iowa Pacific took over the contract here on this line, they transferred me from Colorado, which is where I was born and raised, in Alamosa with the San Luis and Rio Grande Railroad. They moved me here to be a conductor for a little bit. I fell in love with the area and met my current wife, and so this is where I live currently. I also serve as a conductor and engineer most weekends, because we don't have a lot of conductor and engineer for staff, so I also serve as full-time conductor and engineer. So happy to be here. Thank you for the introduction, and that's my story. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're all set.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Chairman. The next item for discussion is the Warrensburg Bike Rally. We just have a letter in here on page 1 and 2 from Ed Zipro. The committee's met him over the years many times. He's come in and talked and thanked everyone for providing the Warren County Fairgrounds for his event. This letter request is to actually extend his contract an additional 10 years. Several years ago, I think we did a 5-year, and that expires in 2017, after 2017. So he's not due for another contract until 2018. But in the letter, just to summarize it quickly, some of his vendors really want a long-term commitment from him to be able to provide the event, because they would be giving us other events in favor of this one, and so he's looking for a longer term, contract. I told him we would at least discuss it and see if it's viable to do one that long, or if the committee would have to, or would consider something shorter, but long enough that perhaps could satisfy his vendors.
Sure.
What are we getting for the fairgrounds in rent?
We get $175 a day, that's the board set fairground rate. And he's usually there for 10 days.
Doesn't seem like very much money.
It is, and there's some burden with us, frankly, in providing the event, but there is some definite spin-off effect. It does bring a lot of, traffic into town, and, our Parks and Recs division has to do water testing and things like that on the site due to some Department of Health codes. And there's some overtime involved with that and some testing costs. But the rate for the fairgrounds has been set at $175 a day for quite some time.
I don't think it's enough. I think we should give more for it, especially if you're gonna start talking about 10 years. And I'm not necessarily in the same pew with the other motorcycle rally on this thing. I agree with Andy Beadnell, all business is good business. They get a certain sect up there in Warrensburg, and they're doing very well with it, and I have no animosity or concern about it as far as the other motorcycle rally. My major concern is that we're giving away the store, and now we're talking about doing it over a longer length of time. Dutcher pays royally for every foot of property he gets on Lake George.
Go ahead, John.
Yeah, I think, I'm pretty sure the fee used to be $350. This was probably 7 or 8 years ago. It was $350, but we weren't getting a lot of use at the fairgrounds. Maybe some of the board members remember back then. And so there was concern that the fairgrounds hadn't been getting used. And so at that point is when the fee was dropped, and then since then we have had this event, certainly been materialized when it moved from Main Street, Warrensburg, over to primarily to the fairgrounds. So that's, I believe it was $350 a day back in the mid-2000s.
What exactly do they do at the fairgrounds?
They set up vendor tents and trailers. They bring in all sorts of motorcycle related vendors and some other, kind of ancillary type vendors.
They're not doing any camping there, or?
The only ones that stay on site are the vendors themselves, so we do allow that, because from a security standpoint, to leave all of their hardware and their material there.
Right.
That we allow them to stay on site. There's no open fires or anything like that, going on. But the business model for, Mr. Zipro's event is completely different from Mr. Dutcher's. His event is totally free. He does have vendors pay a fee to him, but there is no admission cost, there's no parking cost, there's no cost like that. So his model is almost exactly the opposite of the Americade model. So it is early in the process. If the committee wants me to, come back with our hard costs, so you have an idea of what our actual costs are in administering events at the fairgrounds, I'd be happy to do that. Unfortunately, I don't have it with me, because I know I've asked Paul Butler for that in the past. I know he's done the analysis, he could probably turn that around to me pretty quickly. So I can come back next month and brief the committee on that. We can come up with a path ahead from there. There is time, certainly, as I said, we're committed through the end of 2017 to provide the fairgrounds for this rally. And but I know Mr. Zipro is trying to grow it, and he's trying to get additional and bigger vendors to commit, and some of them want a longer term commitment, because they know once they move from one rally to another, they won't be back to the other rally if things don't, aren't consistent in Warrensburg.
Do we have any idea how many motorcycles are up there?
Thousands. I know we do car counts. You remember, Kevin? We do car counts. The vehicle traffic is quite extraordinary.
Yeah, they were significant.
Um,
We could have upwards of 10,000 motorcycles during those 10 days.
Yeah, it's a
And
lot.
you can't necessarily say it's all motorcycles, because the Pacific Counter's out on Spoon River Road, so it's local vehicles traveling up and down the road, but it's significant, the amount of traffic that we
Yeah.
go through there.
It's enough, Dennis, so somebody cut the counter on him, so we couldn't count the number of motorcycles up there one day. So there's a lot of traffic going up that road.
Other than Baker's, where do they stay up there?
What's that?
Other than Baker's Campground, where do they stay up there?
I think a lot of it is local traffic too. I don't know that it's a lot of out-of-towners that are coming in, but I think of it as a lot of it is the local motorcyclists that don't pay to go to Americade. This is, the alternative event for them, so they may be day trippers and, I don't know that we have numbers on kind of the.
I think he did collect zip codes at one time on the way into the event. I really don't know. I mean, I understand why he wants to do it, but I also understand, you know, that we need to put a little bit of an escalator clause. We don't wanna get stuck up there on the fairgrounds like we did with the sewer deal in Queensbury and Glens Falls.
Yeah, that's part of my concern,
You know,
Kevin.
I think there should be something built into the contract where it goes up, a modest amount, you know, every so often. I don't think there's a great expense to the county though, in all honesty, Dennis. I mean, they set
Well, I
the,
wasn't so much concerned about that. The Americade does have an issue with
oh, he has a big issue, yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely, and I understand that.
with vendors. He's having trouble keeping his vendors, and they're a key component of that whole thing. Now, the issue is money, always. And what the vendors want in order to entice them to come. I mean, this is certainly enticement. If they can come up there for free or next to free and with their vending, because people know they're up there. There's no issue about that. But, yeah, I'd be interested in knowing what kind of motorcycle count you have up there, and really, my concern is that we don't sell the county short. It's a
No,
real
I
asset, and he's taken and made a successful operation out of it. I think we all should share on his success.
Are the fairgrounds lighted? Are they using our power and
Yeah.
all that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, there's some overhead
there's
lighting
cost.
there, and there's some power in, the pavilions. Actually, we upgraded one of the pavilions and added power where they set up underneath it. We do have the large, restroom facility there, you know, so there is some utility costs, for sure.
Matt, did you have,
Actually, I was gonna ask if Mr. Tyson knew what those, overhead costs were, but he addressed that.
okay. Evelyn?
I guess my concern is we wanna see this facility used, so I'm okay with putting, and I think that the chairman is right, we should have some form of escalator, especially if we're going to a 10-year. My concern is I don't wanna impact our regular daily rental rate, which may preclude some of the smaller events we've got going on up there that also use the bathrooms and the
Right.
lights and those kind of things. I'm thinking particularly of like the 4-H and those kind of things. We don't wanna have a negative impact, we wanna see this facility used, so I'm okay if by contract we're doing some form of escalation, but I just don't wanna change the daily rate itself at this point.
I think this is entirely different event
It is.
from a normal
Yeah.
one day.
Right.
I mean, one of the problems were, we weren't getting anybody, and then when we have a not-for-profit wanted to use it for something that they'd have to expend, I think it was $150 just to get on the grounds, and that was too much for them, so we lost those events. And I don't know what happened to the Scottish games this year, they didn't come back.
I'm not, I'm
I
considering
didn't
this-
think you were, Dennis,
yeah,
I
just
just
a
wanted to
special
get
event,
that out there, just because I'm hearing all of our hard costs, and my concern was that looking at our hard costs, that may bleed over into let's change the daily rate, so just wanted to throw that on the table.
Thank you.
Okay. The next item is on page 3. This is well, kind of after the fact, but we did have a trunk or treat, up at Upyana Farm, and that notice went out, through the whole board, and I think Amanda sent that notice out. So, We did have 355 participants. The event has been growing steadily, and what that involves is essentially people decorate their vehicles and they come up to Upyonda, they park in the parking lot, and kids come and they walk from vehicle to vehicle collecting candy. So there's, I know on the Upyonda site, they've got photos posted of that event, and it's been quite a successful thing, to the point where traffic control on the state highway has been an issue, and pedestrian safety. So I guess it's a good problem to have, and we've engaged with DPW and state DOT to make sure that that's maintained safe on the state road. The last item, just to report, is that we've stocked 3,064 salmon in Lake George on October 6th.
What size were they?
In Lake George.
What size were they?
Probably too small for you.
Right, probably. Do you know, or were they
I don't
fry
know.
or?
I don't know. I don't think we can put fry in directly in the lake,
No.
we'll just get gobbled up.
Okay.
That nut's for zebra mussels, right?
Sure.
That's all I have for Parks and Rec.
Okay, we'll move into,
Just back on, just wanna follow up a little bit on what, Evelyn, had to say. I think that, we need to give some real thought to what it is that we're looking to accomplish, here at this site, as it relates to, small events, localized events, large events. You know, for example, how do we make a determination over competing events on the same day? What's our decision-making structure? How do we make that decision? Who makes that decision? I think that some real thought needs to be given to this before we get too far along the long-term arrangements. You know, if we allow someone to lock onto a specific event on a specific part of the calendar for an extended period of time, you know, on what basis do we authorize that? Do we do that for anyone? Is it first come, first serve? Also, I think that, you know, we need to provide our attorney a little bit of time here as well to think about contracting public property over an extended period of time. I think that may pull into some other issues dealing with licensing and you know, other kinds of issues, competitive bidding and other kinds of things. So I really think I would ask our staff to spend a little bit of time on this issue, on these types of questions, so that, you know, we don't paint ourselves into a corner here, where the woulda, couldas, and shouldas start. I think it's great. I think it's great. We've got a growing event. You know, the time has come to really think this through now in terms of how we're going to manage these public assets going forward, and how decisions are going to be made. Who's going to make the decisions? Basically, my 2 cents.
okay. Thank you.
Okay. We're ready to move into DPW portion of the agenda, the other packet. The first few resolution requests are regarding the County Route 44 Bridge Painting Project. The first request is on page 1. This is a request to amend grant. This is a federal aid project, and this allows the grant amendment for the actual construction work to occur.
Okay, would somebody like to?
Both, please, Mr. Chairman.
Both, did you say?
Yes, please.
Okay, motion, second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed, carried.
Okay, so that takes care of the first two, and then the third one regarding the same project is the consultant agreement that is also paid out of this grant. That's starting on page 8. That's the amend contract with Clough Harbor, that they will be doing the construction oversight during the payment.
I'd move 8 and 14. If I'm reading this correct, that, they're both related, right, Jeff?
Yes, that's right. 14
Second.
also, yep.
Okay, we have a motion by Supervisor Wood, second by Supervisor Dickinson for 8 and 14. Any discussion? Okay, call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, carried.
Okay, the next two resolution requests on page 15 and 17 are to correct an error in the resolutions that were passed. The simple story on the error is we had requested money to come out of D 9950.910, which is transfers to capital projects. The resolutions that were passed inadvertently listed them as A 9950. The difference is the D 9950 is local match for highway projects. The A 9950 code is for general projects. Both of these resolutions were an error, and we didn't catch them. So we'd request that both of those resolutions be amended.
Talking about 15 and 17?
Yes.
Move both of them.
Okay, Supervisor Dickinson, do we have a second? Supervisor Van Ancelo? Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Okay, the next item is on page 19. This is to establish a new contract with the successful bidder on the West Mountain Road H366 contract. Those bids have been received and they're currently under review by DOT. We're expecting their review to be complete any day now. We did get competitive bids, so we would like to award those contracts immediately once DOT gives us a go-ahead. We're also cognizant of the 45-day bid period for hold pricing, so DOT's aware of our timeline on that. We anticipate getting their go-ahead before the board meeting, and we should have a contractor name to put on the resolution before the board meeting.
Okay, somebody want to move that? Supervisor Sokol, seconded by Supervisor Frazier. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Okay, the next several resolutions are for annual contracts. The first one is contract with Roselle East for crane services. That's on page 20. This is a contract we use for various projects. Term contract that's extended for the initial year plus 2 additional 1-year extensions.
Okay, would somebody like to move that one?
I'd move 20 through 35. They're all our annual contracts, and we're
Right.
pretty much going with the lower bidder on all of them.
Yes.
I'd move them all.
Second.
Okay, got a second by Supervisor Dickinson. We're ready for the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Okay, the next resolution is on page 43. This is to amend our budget to receive an insurance recovery. This was for an accident that occurred where a private citizen ran off the road and hit one of our VMS signboards, which is trailer mounted. This, by the way, bought us a new trailer, and we were able to recover the old one at a good price and be able to repair it in-house. So, this simply amends the budget to increase the revenue side for the insurance recovery and the expense side so we can actually purchase the new VMS board.
Supervisor
So
Sokol?
that's the insurance,
Yes.
19.3?
Yes.
Moved by Supervisor Sokol, seconded by Supervisor Merlino. Call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Okay, the next items are transfer requests. They start on page 47, 48, and 49. This is for various highway project codes. These are our routine transfers for salaries, to apply salaries against projects.
Okay, Supervisor Dickinson, do we have a second? Supervisor from North Creek.
Running name tag.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
That's it for action items. I do have a couple pending items. The first is one that you've seen before. We're still waiting on DEC, and I don't know if Kevin's got an update on that. DEC grants for the household hazardous waste.
Well, we did hear from them, not necessarily saying that they were sending us the grant, that our insurance had expired. We updated our insurance program, but that means that it's on the top of their list, so we should be receiving it shortly.
There's one other pending item that, one of my engineers at Downey had mentioned to me as I was coming here. Maybe Kevin, he said he was gonna talk to you, Kevin, about a DOT grant that we were anticipating to receive between now and the board meeting that we want to implement.
We have another bridge painting, project coming up, that's just a pavement and painting project, it's 3 separate bridges, 1 in Stony Creek and 2 in Johnsburg. Any day now, we've just been waiting for the state local agreement. Once we get the state local agreement, we can apply the grant, we can do the new contract, and we do the capital project, but we're just waiting on that.
So just wanted to give the heads
Okay.
up to the committee that this is our typical federal aid process. If we receive those, I'd like to be able to come to the board so that we can get those implemented.
Okay.
One item for discussion and review, we have the committee may be aware or remember that we have a 5-year agreement with the Village of Lake George to, administer parking on the Beach Road parking lot. That is the county-owned parking lot on Beach Road at the foot of Fort William Henry. It's county-owned. The county has an agreement with the village whereby the village collects, all of the fees from use of the parking lot, to include the parking fees and also some special event fees. And they provide to the county 25% of those revenues, and they keep 75% of the revenues. That was a 5-year agreement that was implemented, 5 years ago. That contract has expired as of the end of this season, and so I wanted to just, bring it to the committee's attention. There's no action needed at this point, and I think what the intent is to reach out to the village to see, what their intent is going forward, or renegotiate that, contract with them. So I just wanted to make sure that everybody's aware of that. I've mentioned it a few times over the years, but now it's actually come to, expiration date.
I think we're gonna talk to the mayor this week,
We're gonna try to set up a meeting
try to
to
set up something.
discuss it with them.
Dennis?
How many parking places are there? Trick question?
Probably about a little over 100, I think. It's a little bigger than our Westbrook parking lot, maybe.
Just over 100.
Yeah, I'm thinking 120 or so, but I don't know for sure, Dennis, but I can get that for you.
We have an agreement, tentative agreement with the mayor for our 50 parking places. The thing you have to remember in these is that they don't see any of the credit card payments in those, pay and park meters. So whatever their percentage is when you start talking about parking fees, it's not, and it goes down every year. More and more people don't carry cash around.
The deal on the Beach Road parking lot is they get all of the revenue, including so we do have a separate agreement on the Westbrook parking lot where they collect cash only and they keep a percentage of cash. Right now, they keep 10% of cash on the Westbrook parking lot. On the Beach Road parking lot, that agreement was implemented 5 years ago, 5+ years ago, and it is all of the revenue funnels through the village. They keep 75% of credit card, cash, and then also special event fees, because there are days that during special events where that's rented out for event purposes. So it's however it'll be a board decision on how you want to move forward, if you want to limit the revenue to certain streams. The current one that has expired had all of those streams. That parking lot brought in a little over $200,000 in total revenue in most years, I think, and it's the most popular parking lot down in, in that area.
When is the meeting?
I don't know, we haven't set it up yet. He's sent a couple letters. We just gotta get something scheduled.
If the county doesn't mind, I'd like to attend.
Okay.
I'll give that to you, just hands,
Letter came in Friday, I think.
just so you can
Okay.
see that was another one.
Okay. Okay, that's all I have for that item. A couple attachments with our overtime report and our fuel usage report. And other than that, I have nothing else.
Chairman,
Yeah, how'd we make out with the Stony Creek 1,000-acre ranch line of sight issue? Has that been rectified?
I've had contact with the owners multiple times over the course of the summer. And after playing phone tag for probably a month plus, I have a meeting coming up, actually tentatively scheduled for tomorrow morning, with Mrs. McLean, or it's Scott's mom, Scott McLean's mom, Carol, I think. We have offered to cut the bank back already. We've made that offer to them, to work within the right-of-way, and we've drafted an access agreement, which requires their signature, where we can go a little bit further onto their property. I have, the intent of this meeting, tomorrow would be to review that on site with the owners. I know they have asked for something more and beyond that, with signage or with flashing lights, which we'll certainly continue to discuss with them. But our first goal, that will be completed this fall, going into winter, would be to cut that bank back, provide additional site distance. Really, the only question is how far we're gonna cut it back, whether we're gonna sign an access agreement that allows us to go on their property, which we'll do more of a site distance improvement. Otherwise, we'll do what we can within the right-of-way.
Okay,
Any other questions on that?
I guess this is more personal than committee, but I'd like to see the numbers on what you're getting for events and parking spaces. Is that readily available, or would that be a nuisance?
No, nothing's a nuisance. Or maybe it's all a nuisance, I don't know. No. I can tell you, we have, in our parking lot, the Westbrook parking lot's the only one that I really have all the good numbers on, but I can request the others from the Beach Road parking lot.
What do you get?
We get $2 an hour, on 90 spaces in the Westbrook parking lot. There are days on the weekends where that is generating, upwards of $2,000 in a single day in revenue from the Westbrook parking lot.
So what'd you get total for the year on the 90 spaces?
I think this year we topped 100,000 on that. There were some disruptions, with construction and some disruptions with events. We also rent the space out for $2,000 a day for adjacent events. If there's an event going on in the park, we will, provide that for $2,000 for exclusive use. Americade rented it for 4 or 5 days.
$2,000 a day?
Yes. And that essentially offsets what we would otherwise be getting in simple parking revenue.
Right.
Given, if it's a sunny summer day, the lot's full.
Okay, thank you.
I think we should look at all of our parking agreements and, put them all together and kind of figure out where we
What I'll do is
should be on those.
what I'll do is in the course of the meeting, this week with the mayor, and we'll try and get a handle on the counts and the, 'cause right now we get, and actually I don't even get it, the reporting goes through the treasurer's office on the revenue, the receipts received. So I don't see the reporting, I only see the numbers after the treasurer's office puts them into our accounting program.
Well, I think you've given me enough for what I really wanted, so I think we're all set, thank you.
Supervisor Conover.
Chairman, I brought this up before, and I'm a little concerned that, perhaps you already go out to bid, and you have these opportunities already, and if so, just, please explain. But we recently had a situation in the county where a paving machine that we rent went down, and we were caught with a number of projects basically in midstream. And it would seem to me that we should, now I understand there are financial implications with this, but we should have a situation where, if necessary, we can call on the private sector to come in and complete that paving job, because we're unable to, because we can't get a paving machine, because all the paving machine are out, and the ones upstairs are gonna be down for a while. And this also applies to situations where perhaps jobs don't quite turn out the way we wanted them to, but now we've pulled out, we're over in Thurman now, we're no longer in the other community, and we need to bring, we need to take some corrective action, and where a project just lingers because we're waiting for the paving crew to get freed up so they can come back to, for example, in this example, Thurman or Hague or Bolton, to come back and do something. It just seems to me that that in situations like that, and they do happen, and they happen every year, that we should be in a position to be able to say, know, we need to envelope out here a little bit, and we need to bring in, some companies. Now, a lot of times what happens is you know, you don't know how long a paving machine's gonna be down. I mean, initially, maybe you think you can get another paving machine, or you think what's broken on the machine can be fixed readily. Maybe that's a good assessment, but maybe it's not. And then, and especially as you get into the year, and especially if you got projects where the roads have been milled up, I mean, how long do you maintain a road like that? For how long? How long do you expect the people to have to pass over a road like that? Or you have another road you're planning to return to, but now it's getting late in the year. You know, maybe you got a situation over in Warrensburg or somewhere where you have a section. I mean, I think we need to look at how much paving we're doing. We need to take a look at how much paving the towns are asking of us. And I think we need to build some flexibility into this situation where, if necessary, our staff can pick up the phone and call Peckham or call whoever and say, you know, when can you get in here? When can you fit it into your schedule? So at least we know, for example, that we tried to reach out to the private sector, but quite frankly, they couldn't. The contractors that we called, that we have on bid or on call, couldn't fit it into their schedule. We have an explanation for people, as opposed to, well, you know, we expect to get the paving machine back in a week or two, and when we do, you know, we're going to get over to Horicon and finish a job over there. We're going to get over to Warrensburg and repair what needs to be repaired over there with both landings. So I don't expect a response here, Jeff. All I'm saying is that, you know, I think if you're not already in a position to be able to do that, I would strongly recommend that you put yourself in a position to be able to do that. Now, money becomes the issue because you have people on salary and you're paying for a paving crew. And now if you bring in the private sector, it's gonna cost you some money, right? In other words, now you're bringing in, I mean, if we need to budget to be able to deal with emergency situations like that, then, you know, then maybe we should discuss that. But I think having these projects linger in situations like this is, you know, is really getting kind of unacceptable. And I think there is an answer here when appropriate. And so I would just put it back out on the table. And it also includes driveways. We have an issue with a particular driveway. Now the entire paving crew's picked up and gone to another municipality. And now we've got people that we have waiting extended periods of time for us to free up our crews to have to come back to deal with a driveway where, you know, I don't know why we just can't pick up the phone and call a paving company, a driveway company, and just say we got an issue over here in town of Thurmond or Bolton or wherever. Please go remedy the situation. And we've already pre-bid it. And I think our performance would be much better. Yes, we're going to pay for it, but also we're going to put a lot more work out the door. So those are my 2 cents.
Do we have those contracts?
Yeah, we actually have those contracts, and we've used those contracts and are using those contracts. There's, in particular with the County Route 11 project, there's, you know, a few other things that occurred that made that project even more complicated. In part, you know, the plant schedules and the plant capacity where we couldn't get enough material out of the project. With the paver going down, waiting for parts, then trying to get a second paver, which they aren't really available during the construction season. And then, as you mentioned, the contractors, they're contracted out, and so it is a difficult thing. Certainly, that project lingered too long, but there was multiple factors that impacted it. The first of which was that, you know, the prior layers of asphalt that had been placed there in years past, long before I was around here, you know, they weren't using tack coat in between layers of asphalt like we do, you know, religiously now, and we have done ever since I got to DPW. So what ends up happening is we mill 2 inches, and then we start delaminating lower sections where there's not a good adherence. So we end up with a road like County Route 11 that ended up much rougher than it should have been through a good milling project, and we ended up with sections delaminated, so it was a rougher ride. We've already pushed some of our projects for this year into contracts. There are state contracts available. We have standby contracts We actually just, renewed one with Kubricki. Just the challenge is always, when we implement a contract, is to be able to align those contractors that are also in crunch time, fighting weather. When the plants get involved with state projects, it consumes all of their capacity, and what we end up doing is pushing from a major road project back to a smaller repair project, or a smaller, where we can slip a couple trucks into the plant and get material, but doing 1,000 tons is not possible. So there's a lot of factors. I appreciate the comment, because it's frustrating for me too. We do have contracts available, it's just it's difficult sometimes to implement them quickly. And I don't know if it's a matter of awarding the contracts to multiple contractors. We could take a Kubricki contract, if we had legally the ability to award to multiple contractors, that would give us the flexibility to call Kubricki and say, hey, if you can't do it, then we'll call number 2 guy. The problem is with public work contracts is we're constrained by municipal law and how we award those. I think maybe there's something we can talk with the county attorney on, and the purchasing agent, about having language in the bids so that in the event that a contractor can't fulfill a request, that we could go to number 2, and it would be kind of a pecking order based on price. Maybe there's a way to do that. So I think that would be an increased flexibility that we could look at, certainly.
Well, another option might be to canvass the towns in the beginning and ask them, do you want us to do it with our crews, or do you want us to bid the work? So we have a choice of whether we want to bring in a private contractor, or whether we want the county crew to do it. I mean, either way, it's going to cost us, right? Perhaps it's less with the county, perhaps not, depending upon the particular situation. So that might be another option. I think a little bit more thought needs to be given to this in terms of how we're going to do this going forward. I mean, I've been here 7 years. You always run into situations, whether it's layering or tack coat or whatever. And it just seems to me that we could build a lot more flexibility into the system, and most important, it's going to deliver to the bottom line. It's going to deliver to the amount of production that goes out the door.
Okay, I wanted to talk about the county chipping grinder.
Yes,
If we could-
we talked some in committee in the past about doing a consolidated bid to bring a contractor in to do stump grinding and brush grinding. We have made contact with several vendors to try and get a feel for how to structure a contract like that and what they typically do. Right now the market for that biomass is really not such that it wouldn't be at cost. We have talked with contractors simply about day rates, and we're probably looking at $2,000 or $3,000 a day to have a grinder on site operating. Our thought is to put a bid out that the towns could piggyback on, that would allow a mobilization charge for them to come on site, set up their tub grinder or plate grinder, and then an operational charge for every day they operate. My thought is that most of the towns have the capacity and the equipment to be able to load the grinder and to be able to cart off chips or to push chips if they had to, and that we would just be looking at a contractor to provide the equipment and the manpower to run the equipment while the various municipalities load it. What I think would work in concept would be to get something in place here for early spring, where it would simply be a mobilization rate plus a day rate. The towns could use that contract as they seeded necessary, and they would just pay that mob rate to get the equipment set up on their site, and the day rate for the number of days they need it.
I think the towns, I mean, I know for Horicon, especially with this last storm, I'm looking at a lot of brush that we have no way to get rid of, and our residents don't have a way to get rid of. So I think it would be a worthwhile process to go through.
Yeah, our experience, thank you, Mr. Chairman, our experience in Bolton is these getting the limbs untangled once they're on one big pile. Very labor intensive. You know, it's one thing to pick them all up, throw them in a dump truck and take them to Lake George. It's quite another thing to start to untangle that pile, pull them out, put it into a grinder. That can be very labor intensive.
Set them on fire.
So it's yeah, right. So it seems to me it's a kind of a three-part thing here. And maybe that's the responsibility of the locale, right? Is to untangle it, you know, if you get a private contractor to do that can get.
Well, the whole brush issue is a problem. I mean, if the brush is too old, if it's been cut for a while before you pick it up, it won't go through the grinder. Doesn't have any pizzazz to it. So, you have all those problems. It was a lot easier when you piled that big pile and just torched it. A lot more fun, too.
Do you wanna say something?
No,
Oh, okay, I thought you.
nope.
So with the grinding, is there an issue with,
Well, the,
'cause I know with the
handling
chipper
of
would be-
tangled limbs is certainly an issue. And it's, you know, certainly for the towns, because they have residents, they're taking residential collection, the residents are coming in, just throwing it on a pile. It's not, you know, I know the highway crews, including the county crew, try to chip brush on site, so we're not bringing back, small brush, we're bringing back, larger trunks, tree trunks and stumps is what we're concerned about being able to get rid of. Generally, we chip everything on site, as I think most of the town highway crews do as well.
Okay. Gene?
Well, the only problem we experienced is, I mean, we used to stack it and burn it until we couldn't do it anymore. But you can give out 50 burning permits for people burning their backyards, but that's here and there. The problem you have is when people come to the landfills and dump it on the ground, and they drive away. Well, when we kinda use the front end loader to stack it, you start picking up rocks and sand and everything else, and a lot of these guys that come in, we tried it, they don't like the rocks in between
Right.
all the branches and stuff, so it, you know, we thought about paving a, 50 by 50 piece, and at least when we're pushing it on pavement, but it's still expensive, and it's still expensive to even have it for one day, for little towns, so I don't know. Right now, we're dumping it and burying it in the back of our landfill, but, it gets filled up real quick.
Okay. Any other discussion?
I don't have anything else.
Anything from the committee?
Burn it and get the fine, it's cheaper.
Motion to adjourn?
It's like the health
Favor?
insurance.
Aye.
Don't buy health insurance.
We're adjourned.
I was surprised.